Hello, Podsmashers of the Internet, and welcome to another episode of
80-Bit Podsmash,
where gaming goes to grab a beer.
We are your hosts, Penguin and Termite, and as we have mentioned for the last 3 episodes, we are on diets, so instead of drinking beer, we are drinking whiskey, because that just happens to be something that we can do. What is the whiskey we're drinking tonight? Because we're doing something a little bit different tonight than we were before.
We are drinking Russell's 10-year bourbon. And it's not something that's like the super popular stuff, but it is on the same level, quality level of like Maker's Mark or Elijah Craig.
Yeah, it's definitely got that, I don't even know how to describe it, but you said smoky, and I think that smoky works, but it's definitely got that bourbon-y taste. Like, it's very...
Yeah, it has the boozy, like, liquor in your face, kind of smash your teeth situation going on.
Like, I want to say rye, but I don't think that rye is the right word, because I don't know if they make it with rye.
No, it might have... So, bourbon has to have an X amount of corn in the ratio to be considered bourbon.
Yeah.
But the other aspect of the liquor can be barley, rye, wheat, whatever you want.
Yeah, because I'm getting that.
You might have a little bit of more rye in it than, like, your Bullet, Maker's Mark, etc.
Yeah, well, 80-Bit Podsmash is not only where gaming goes to grab a beer, but for those who are just joining us for the first time, what we are, our descriptor is we are a weekly video game podcast smashing ideas of video games with conversations that you care about. So yeah, we'll start today by just talking about some updates, things going on in the industry, things that are interesting.
It's crazy right now.
It is very crazy. So, I mean, just 2 episodes ago, we were talking about, it's a slow time, there's not a lot of gaming news.
And boom.
And then just like, yeah, it's been a cascade. We didn't get to really talk much about it last week because we did our interview, but yeah, so we have
since last time we talked to our audience, there's a scandal going on with Gearbox and a $12 million
Randy
bonus.
Pitchford, there's a suit and a countersuit. So Gearbox is suing their former lawyer for fraud.
Yeah.
And then the former lawyer is countersuing them for fraud, but also he's brought up some allegations against the CEO of Gearbox, Randy Pitchford, including some not particularly
legal videos,
yes, involving not very good stuff.
Yes, we'll keep it family friendly.
Keep it family friendly.
And then EA just canceled a second Star Wars game after they canceled Visceral's game with Annie Hennig, the writer of Uncharted. She was heading that up. They canceled that a while ago. Well, they said in the good news spin of that story, they're making a newer, like, more open world. Remember the outrage of that was like, oh, the EA doesn't care about single player anymore.
Right.
And then now that game is canceled, and so we're only left with Respawn Entertainment's The Fallen Order,
yeah. I was wondering if
that's still good. It's still happening. But there's a 10-year deal with. I'm only going to talk about this for like a second.
Yeah, that's fine.
There's a 10-year deal that Disney and EA have for EA to have the Star Wars license, and within the 10 years, we're 5 years in. So if you look back at the first 5 years of what we've gotten Battlefield 1, which had no story at all and was like weak. And then we got Battlefield 2, which came out with nothing but backlash and controversy and bad PR and just wrecked, like, all the microtransaction fiasco.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all we've got. After 5 years, halfway through your deal with Disney. And
it's already been a
their clock's ticking, I imagine, with Disney.
Yeah, I bet they're losing their patience.
Star Wars.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And then now we have this Activision stuff going on.
Yeah. So Activision, I'll try to be as succinct as possible with the Activision stuff, but they have been constantly in my news feed, just thing after thing after thing. So it started, obviously, the heat started with shortly after the fallout after BlizzCon, and we talked all about our disappointment of all the Diablo stuff and all that stuff. Well, in the fallout after BlizzCon, there was an article by Jason Schreier talking about the sort of corporate takeover culture that Activision has been asserting over Blizzard in the last few years. And I think we've hit on that a little bit, but the general idea is that Activision has told Blizzard that they need to start cutting costs, and producing more games. Mm-hmm. So that with that as like the context, then all this crazy things started happening. Number one, Activision CFO started courting Netflix, and so Activision fired him. And now he's working for Netflix,
of course.
So he didn't really lose anything in that transaction. Then Blizzard's separate CFO, who was assigned to them by Activision, by the way, and was the one telling them to cut costs. He quit. So, and amidst all this culture of like, you need to be cutting costs, they hired a new CFO and offered him a $15 million bonus on top of his probably already substantial salary. So people are like, wait a minute, you're cutting costs, but you're giving this dude $15 million as a signing bonus? Like, what the heck? So there's all that going on. In the midst of all of that, Bungie, who produces the Destiny franchise right now, they seem to work out a deal where they liberated themselves from Activision. So
they completely severed it.
At the end of December, there were reports that Activision had been telling Bungie that they were not pleased with the sales of Destiny, and so there was all that kind of like what's going on, what's going to happen to Destiny, and then this is what happened. Bungie was able to liberate themselves, and they were able to keep the intellectual property of Destiny. So they'll be now developing it on their own. So the whole that's a whole separate thing. Like the whole question of Destiny's future is up in the air, now because there were some positive influences, and a lot of people were considering the influence that Activision was having on Bungie because Activision's release schedule is so much more demanding than we had seen previously with Destiny 1. And so a lot of people were praising them for the lack of the content drought. So now it'll be interesting to see, okay, well, will Bungie kind of keep that into practice and try to keep releasing content at a steady pace?
Yeah, I'm excited to see what the quality of that content is going to be.
Or will
now they don't have to get Activision's approval.
I mean, and Bungie 2 was panned, not Bungie 2. Destiny 2 was panned for the microtransaction stuff at the beginning too. So now they'll be able to kind of take their approach on monetizing Destiny and see how that works out. We might be able to see. I'm hoping that we see a just kind of across the board price drop in regards to I'm sure that the whole fact of you have to buy this expansion and then you have to buy the new expansion and the battle pass and the whole $80, $90 upgrade to Forsaken. I'm hoping
was that really just Activision wanting to get a profit on it, or was it Bungie also needing a profit?
Exactly. So I'm really interested to see how that happens.
How's it going to shake out?
Yeah, but so Activision is just under all kinds of heat right now with everything that's going on with Blizzard, with Bungie leaving,
implications,
and
what
then
Bungie can do
with all the.
What if Microsoft grabs Bungie again?
I think they came out in support of their departure from Activision.
because Microsoft's buying up all
the
kind
other
of
thing
stuff.
that makes me worried, though, is NetEase, the same company that's partnering with Blizzard.
That's the Chinese company, right?
Yeah. They expressed an interest in investing in Bungie as well. So I'm like, what is going to happen? Can Bungie just learn their lesson and be like, okay, no, we're good. We're going to make this on our own and distribute it on our own, or whatever they're going to end up doing.
I heard a crazy theory on a podcast. They talked about Shuhei Yoshida coming out and saying how PlayStation's weakest in their exclusive studios and all their exclusive games that have come out, their weakest genre is first-person shooters. So what if Sony came out and bought Bungie?
Nice, that would be awesome.
Not bought them, but acquired them.
Right, but what I'm mostly interested in seeing is if they're going to be like, okay, is Destiny 2 too far gone, and now we're gonna release a little bit more of the content we had planned that we have in development. But then we're going to move on to development on Destiny 3. Are they going to try to start fresh? Part of me is I hope so. I would like to see what they do with a fresh, clean slate.
Destiny reboot.
the whole thing.
Destiny Reborn.
It's a Fate. Realm Reborn.
All of that
Destiny
story,
Realm Reborn.
That's it. If you read the development story of Destiny 1, all the lore was canned.
Well, what I would
they
love,
went back and grabbed all that.
I would love to see them do something where Destiny 3 is Destiny Ultimate, where basically they have all of the content, all of the raids, and they remaster it or whatever they have to do to just incorporate it all into one big game.
Yeah,
and then be this is the ultimate Destiny experience, and this is what we're gonna do moving forward. And then they just basically have all the past content and future content, unifying it under a series of systems or something to make it so that it's a unified experience. But I think that would be awesome. If they just were let's do the entire package. So, but yeah, I just think that all the news with Activision, the whole cutting cost controversy, while also dealing with, and it's just Activision's I think I just told you right before we started. I was it seems like Bethesda was under the heat lamp, at the beginning of December, and they were like, "Oh man, we've got a lot of heat coming our way," and then Activision's like, "Hold my beer."
Yep.
I just haven't. It's been nonstop, just bad press coming from Activision, and when I listed it all out, you might be like, "Well, that doesn't seem like it's all that bad," but it's just been constant, nonstop Activision mess ups, and people are just livid, and most people are like, "Can we find a way for Blizzard to liberate themselves as well?" But here's the problem. Activision Blizzard is now its own. Activision and Blizzard are now two separate developers under a publisher titled Activision Blizzard.
Right. Much like Rockstar has.
So they've merged, and all of the other things that make me sad is all of the one of the co-founders, Mike Morhaime of Blizzard, was their CEO for a while, and he has now stepped down. So it's effective, I think, at the beginning of February, he's done. And so they're going to be under a whole new CEO. So it's all the people who made Blizzard what Blizzard was are gone now. So it's
what's going to happen?
It's like, it's just, yeah, I just hope that they can turn things around. I hope that, there was one last final thing. After the Bungie departure, Activision went under investigation for fraud. So, like, now they're being investigated for fraud. That was the other big one. So, your whole cutting cost thing, and then they're being I think they're being investigated for fraud in regards to how their games are monetized. Something like that. So, it's like, I hope that all of this has just taught them they need to change the way they do business. They need to change the way that they make games. But
I mean, Activision's one of the big publishers. I mean, EA is another
it's
one.
Up there with EA and
I mean, I wouldn't even say Square Enix is that big.
Right, yeah.
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, at least American companies, EA and Activision are really the big ones, and then just above them is the big three: Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. But I don't think anyone really compares to Activision right now. Activision and EA,
right?
In regards to kind of the major
size
publishers
and how much influence they have, and how many studios are under them. And it's like, this is a big deal in the gaming industry. Yeah. Did you also hear about the 4 lawsuits against Fortnite?
No.
Every type of dance now, like, people are chasing after Epic. So Epic owns Fortnite. Yeah, Epic's making all of this amazing moves with this new store and like a digital marketplace that is going to compete with Steam and like give developers more royalties and monetary bonuses for their game sales, more incentives to join their store. So doing all this cool stuff, getting all this good press. Yay, hoorah, PC gaming store is going to be great. And then Fortnite's under attack, I guess, because they're the most successful video game at the moment, money-wise. But every dance that's happened, like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air dance, the actor that did that, he's suing for rights. And the latest one was there's this orange kid, I don't know.
I have no idea.
But apparently, like, he entered a competition to get his dance into Fortnite and lost, but the dance is still in Fortnite. And so he's now turning around and suing and like removing all evidence that he ever entered his dance into the contest to begin with. It's a mess, dude.
Wow.
Like, he's got the weakest case ever. It's stupid. But just like all of the stuff in the gaming industry.
Yeah.
Like the lawsuit, it's just January hit and boom.
Yeah, it's like lawsuit season has begun. Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I really hope that as much as, okay, let me put it this way. If there is any truth to the claims regarding Randy Pitchford and Gearbox, like, if there's any truth to the claims, there's like multiple claims. There's the stuff with the videos.
That's actually like complete speculation and actually the weakest.
Probably, yeah, the weakest. The other thing is like there's reports of like religious discrimination against the lawyer. Like there's all kinds of stuff that, like, okay, if they are guilty of it, or rather more importantly, if Randy Pitchford is guilty of it, then he needs to serve justice, and that's the bottom line. If this dude is making this all up, then like I hope he gets his comeuppance too. But the most important thing that I care about is I just hope that Borderlands 3 does not get affected by all of this. Like, I hope that they can still release a good game that is something that I can be happy with and proud of. Take-Two Interactive. That's the other big one, maybe.
Yeah, this is the big thing. Former Gearbox lawyer accuses CEO Randy Pitchford of taking secret $12 million bonus in lawsuit Gearbox calls absurd.
Yeah. So
it's still like it's all being like argued, and there's evidence that doesn't condemn, and there's condemning evidence. Apparently the voice actor for Claptrap says it's all true, like all the accusations are true, and he doesn't work for Gearbox anymore.
Yeah.
But how can Gearbox get around all of that bad PR at the moment?
Still, yeah.
Just announce Borderlands 3.
Right.
Just come out and be like, here it is. It's coming out this year.
This is our plan.
Everyone forget about the lawsuits that are happening. Borderlands 3 is here.
They need to at this point because this is bad.
Yeah, it's getting rough, man.
Yeah, but let's move on from updates. Stop talking about things that make us sad or stressed, and instead let's talk about things that make us happy. In doing this podcast is our favorite thing. Doing this podcast is our favorite thing. Favorite things is a chance for us as your hosts to just update you on the things that we care about in hopes that you might find something that you care about. I'll start. I don't know if you've got your favorite thing.
Lay it on me.
Me and my wife have been taking advantage of our Hulu subscription that we got for very cheap, 99 cents a month.
That Black Friday deal
was awesome. Black Friday deal was sweet. But so we've been trying to watch some shows that we've been wanting to watch for a while, and I have had my eye on a show called Legion.
Yes.
For quite some time.
I wanted to see that.
It's very good. It takes place in the X-Men universe, so it's technically a superhero show, but it is so unlike any superhero piece of content I've ever seen that is like mainstream Marvel or DC. It is so artistic and interesting. It reminds me a lot of Senua's Sacrifice because the main character is schizophrenic.
I want to play it so bad.
And you want to play it?
Senua's Sacrifice.
Yeah. So it's like they really at least try. I would have to talk to someone with mental illness or someone who works with people with mental illness to really formulate an opinion. But from what I can tell, they seem to at least be trying to honor the idea of mental illness with this character. But if you don't know who Legion is, and he was a villain in the X-Men comics who was a telepath and had different like telepathic abilities, and each ability was he had multiple personality disorder, and each ability was controlled by a different personality.
Wow!
So one could teleport, one could control minds, one could use telekinesis.
What's this character's name?
Legion.
Oh, that's his name.
That's the show's name of the and that's what the show's named after.
Is there comics with this?
Yeah, I mean he's a character in the Marvel comics.
I didn't know if he was like exclusive to the shows.
Yeah, no. He is inspired by a character from the comics that would fight the X-Men. That's great. And this seems to be like they're taking like a prequel approach. So this is like how he becomes Legion, and it's really it's got a great actor in it. It's so good. You guys just need to if you ever get a Hulu subscription or if you already have one and haven't seen Legion yet, like you should check it out. It's really unlike anything else that's ever been done with the Marvel properties. So. Yeah. It's awesome. Almost Doctor Strange level, but if you took Doctor Strange up a notch and made it weirder and artsier, it's like that. Nice. It's so good.
My favorite thing is a pair of headphones that I purchased to replace.
Oh yeah!
I bought a gaming headset for my Xbox 360 years ago. One of the Turtle Beach brands headsets that was like exclusive to the 360, and I used it for PC gaming. Here's how this went down. This is what I had to do to set this thing up. Your TV has an audio out. Mine does. I had to plug these headphones and run a cable from the audio out of my TV to a regular headphone 3.5 millimeter jack onto the front of the TV. Like the cable ran from the back to the front. And then I had to hook up my headset to that and then sit all the way across the couch. So I had this giant cord running from my face down into the back of my TV to hear audio from the game.
Yeah.
Then to establish chat, I had to go online and buy a special PS4 cable that runs from the headset down into the controller. So I had two wires running from my face, one to the controller, one to the TV. Super annoying, cumbersome, but hey, I had it. It was forward compatible with the PS4. I was happy I could get it to work. So I tried to play games with you. We were going to go play Borderlands. We were playing Borderlands,
yep.
And the microphone didn't work.
We were doing our annual run of the Christmas DLC.
Yes. And I noticed the PlayStation was not picking up any microphone at all. And I tried different mics and it would work.
Like, you just got quiet. Like you were able to start. Like I was able to hear you when we started. But then at some point you just got quiet and I'm like, Danny.
Yeah. What happened? Yeah, and so the microphone stopped working. I couldn't get it to work with anything else. So I was like, well, the microphone headset thing is busted. I'm done with this. And I trashed it.
Nice.
And I went and bought the new version of the gold PlayStation wireless headset.
Not right then. We finished our game. He got the old janky, like the one that came with the earbud.
Which I will never use.
Except for that one time you did use it with me, and it sounded fine.
I'm sure it was, but it's the most uncomfortable thing to wear
ever. Yeah.
And it doesn't have any game sound. You still have to use your speakers, which is bad when your kid's asleep and your wife's doing something else and doesn't want to hear a game and you talking. So I bought this wireless headset. It changed my life. It's amazing. It has like virtual surround sound. It has an app that's in the PlayStation that has special profiles for specific games. So I can put it on Red Dead Redemption 2 mode, and it has like sound profiles specifically for that. So it sounds really good. And I'm playing Spyro at the moment because I got it for Christmas, and it has a Spyro mode, so it sounds really good.
Dude, I wonder if it has a Senua's Sacrifice mode.
I don't know. I bet it does.
I bet it does, and I bet it sounds so good.
Yeah,
like they even recommend to play it with headphones. Yeah, I didn't play it primarily with headphones. I did it for the experience for like a few seconds, and I was like, all right, I'm going to go back to the regular sound.
Yeah, and it's completely wireless.
Nice.
It's just on my face.
You just pop it on when you're ready to go.
I can walk around the basement.
How much was that again?
$100.
Oh.
Yeah. It's expensive.
Woof.
There's not even a boomstick for the mic.
Yeah.
The mic is built into the earpiece.
Oh, nice.
It just picks you up.
Yeah.
And so it's all there. It's all wireless. Nothing's in front of you. So if I want to snack while I'm talking and you hear me chomping down on your pork rinds and whatever you do, I can do that. It's awesome. Yeah. So it changed. I use it all the time. Whenever I'm gaming on my own, I use them all the time. And I used to use my TV speakers.
Yeah.
But yeah, the headphones are amazing. So I highly recommend the gold PlayStation wireless headset.
Cool. All right, that's not all for favorite things, and now it's time to move on to DLC, downloadable content.
That might get critiqued as a little weak.
It might get. Want to try it again?
No, I was fine. You were like, bow, 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 bow.
Yeah, and you want to know why? In full disclosure,
why?
I went to look to see what I had written down for DLC and realized I actually didn't write it down.
Oh.
So let's see if I can actually remember what my DLC plan was for the day. This is why we write things down, Penguin. It has to do with our topic. So our main topic today is we're going to be talking about currencies in video games.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to kind of be breaking down some of that. So for DLC today, I wanted to do a discussion about, that's right. If you were told that you were no longer going to be getting paid in American dollars, and instead we're going to be getting paid in a different currency, which video game currency would you want to get paid in?
Ooh.
Knowing that, I'll expand this and give some rules, knowing that you could then, enter that world and buy stuff in that world, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, you could buy things from Hyrule and bring them into the real world if you were paid in rupees.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was already gravitating towards rupees. It's funny you mentioned that. But then I was thinking of, what would actually have real world value? And so then I was gravitating towards the biggest microtransaction thing. So it would be like Fortnite V-Bucks that I could hawk on eBay and make real cash with. So how do you want me to play this out? Do I want American dollars for my life? Or do I want to bring skins from World of Warcraft into my world and wear them?
That's a good question.
Not going to sustain my family.
Yeah.
But I can go to any vendor in World of Warcraft and buy a chicken bone for a gold. So if I were to be paid in my salary's worth of gold, I would be rich. Because if you translate $1 American to 1 gold, you would be way rich because of how cheap food items are. In fact, I think it's copper and silver for eating items.
Yeah.
And so I'd be able to feed my family.
Just be able to, pull in stuff.
Can you buy property in World of Warcraft?
You cannot.
So I wouldn't be able to have a place to live. I'd lose my house.
Yeah.
Unless I sold the gold online for real money to make the mortgage. And I probably wouldn't end up ahead.
Or you could bring in rare food items. I bet you mana biscuits are super awesome. You'd be the exclusive source on mana biscuits and be able to resell those in the real world
too. Especially if they're really good for athletes.
Yeah,
because then I could hawk them to NFL, NBA, the Runners Association.
You want to hear my currency?
So I think I'm gonna have to use gold from World of Warcraft.
Okay,
if I can bring those products into the real world.
So mine, I'm actually basing off an article that I'll see if I can find and we'll link off to, but he called it the Toadstool Exchange. And he based this off and so this article was breaking it down. It was breaking down video game currencies and was so it was more of a fun thing. And he was like, the one video game currency that has universal value across all currencies of all time, that never depreciates, it never appreciates, it simply stays at its maximum value, is the coin from the Mario series.
Okay.
And the reason
is you would want to be paid in.
Because 100 coins equals 1 resurrection.
In every game.
In every Mario game. I'm not sure of every Mario game, but at least in the early Mario games, every 100 coins equals 1 extra life. So, I would have, potentially, as long as I'm getting paid, I would have that many lives stored up. And, I could just continue to live over and over again and continue to make money.
Mario or Waluigi swimming in your gold, smells like new money,
exchanging
looks like fake royalty.
Exchanging it for lives, which hopefully I would be able, if I could bring them into the real world, the green mushrooms, in the form of green mushrooms, then I would be in charge of immortality. I would be the fountain of youth.
Oh, yes. You would be able to hand out a mushroom to anyone who grovels at your feet.
Yeah, basically.
Yes.
Oh, you're on death's door? Here, have a mushroom. First, you must give me your soul.
Because you got paid in Mario coins.
Yep, basically, guys, I got paid Mario coins. As long as if I were to make 1 Mario coin a day, then every year I'd get 3 lives. Still a lot. Did I say 1 Mario coin a year? I meant 1 Mario coin a day.
Yeah, I was like, wow, you make very little money.
1 Mario coin a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
that's
it.
Yeah.
That's DLC. Is that more enthusiastic
DLC.
for you, Ryan?
He's watching.
He's always listening.
Holding us accountable.
He's always listening. Cool. All right. Well, let's get into it then. Let's talk about currency in a more reverent way. Not reverent, but less fun, excitable way. So, we're talking about video game currencies. Why do we think this is a good topic to talk about? Termite, did you want to break down why?
Every single video game that I can remember ever playing has some sort of, not every, I mean, that's No, but
right.
Video games have currencies. Like coins.
They have
rupees,
in-game currencies of some kind.
Money, like anything.
And we thought it was interesting.
Gil, GP, Polka Dollars. I mean, like every game, Final Fantasies, RPGs, Mario titles, platformers, action games, every genre, there's money everywhere.
Right, and now you're seeing even things where it's like, oh yeah, now you're able to basically, in some regards, there are in-game currencies that are made up things,
like I just mentioned, Gil,
that you can now buy with real money in order to buy in-game things. So now, in a lot of ways, in-game currencies, they're starting to blur a line between in-game video game currencies and cryptocurrencies. So, like, because there are now currencies that are virtual that equate to real-world dollars
that rise and fall in value based on demand.
Yep, exactly, based on demand and based on what you can buy with them, which are usually things that don't exist. They only exist in a virtual world,
right?
So they only have the value that we place on them as humans. It's so it's not, So it's actually a really interesting topic.
I mean, gold is really the same thing,
and we're hoping to kind of
If the U.S. dollar is backed by gold, it only has value based on.
That's an amazing segue. What is currency then? Like, why don't we start there? Why don't we just start with, like, again, we're not wanting to talk down to our audience, but why don't we start from a definitive standpoint?
You just defined it.
What is currency?
What did you say it was?
You said it. You said it's some made up thing that we all decide has value and use it to exchange for goods and services.
Right.
So back in the days of our hunter-gatherer and early civilization ancestors, the way that you would exchange goods and services was by literally doing that, just trading.
Yeah, bartering.
Like, hey, yo, I like your cow. I will give you 30 of my corn stalks for that cow. And that was bartering. That's a bartering system. At some point, we realized as creatures that why don't we have something that's relatively worthless that we can then say is now the equivalent of X amount of days work or something. And then that's how currency was born, was like through the idea of like wages. Is like, hey, if you work for this amount of time, we will give you this amount of rocks. And then you can use those rocks to then exchange it for cows. And that's how currency was born. So now it's become this elaborate system that we use to, it's become as elaborate and crazy as like the New York Stock Exchange, where theoretical dollars are just flying all over the place.
Right, and it's backed by gold.
But it's not anymore. Like, we lost the gold standard. So it's so there was a point where we were like, okay, well, we need to back this with something. We need to say that this amount of dollars equals this amount of gold, so that if the dollars go away and if society breaks down, then we still have this gold, which apparently humans consider as universally valuable,
I guess.
But it's,
if that goes away, you better be ready to beg, steal, borrow, or barter.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. So, but then the gold standard went away. So now currency is really just this thing. It's like this agreed upon thing that we're all like, this has value and this equals this amount of stuff. So that's what currency is. So with that in mind, we kind of were starting to touch on this. How are currency systems then used in games? Like what is the tangible benefit to having a currency system in a video game?
It's a way that you can use, you can block things off, like progression. You can restrict the pace at which the player plays a game. You can influence a player to do specific things. You can introduce new mechanics later in the game. I can't think. I'm kind of like dancing around the same idea.
You can create scarcity in, like, you can create basically what amounts to artificial scarcity in how the game is played. So you can be like, okay, well, you can buy 10 health potions, but if you buy 10 health potions, you might not be able to buy that many mana potions. And so it literally will affect your playstyle. Like, do I care? Like, as a player, you have to weigh.
Right.
Like, do I care more about my health or do I care more about my mana? Will I be more successful if I have, mana reserves or health reserves? Like, so it really,
should I buy armor?
Yeah, or should I buy a sword?
Health.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's also a progression mechanic too. So like, you could always just grind the money. Like in Final Fantasy games for hours and hours, you can just grind the money you want and buy everything. In fact, I used to do that in Final Fantasy 9. Every time you enter a new town, you have new gear. Your abilities are tied to the gear, so to make sure I learned every ability I could possibly learn, I would grind all the money that I needed to make sure I could buy every piece of gear from every town, and then continue to grind. It was grindy.
Yeah.
So that's a bad example of how in-game currencies can be used, because you can pad a game with like extra...
Right, you can say your game, our game is 80 hours long, but in order to beat it, you have to spend 40 of those hours grinding gold just to get your character strong enough, where it's like, okay, that's not actually content, that's just repetitive tasks.
And that's one interesting aspect of certain in-game currencies, is that they're limitless. There's no, like, it's infinite. right?
Yeah.
So like there's
some
dollars,
people
there's
sometimes
a finite amount of US dollars to go around. So the US dollar fluctuates in its value based on that. With Bitcoin, there's a finite amount of calculatable blockchain bits. So like those things increase and decrease in value based on demand.
Yeah.
Where with video games, it's an infinite supply. You could just put more time into it.
Yeah,
and you'll get the money you want.
I guess the only thing is sometimes they create an arbitrary cap, like you can max out at X amount of gold. Yeah, but then once you spend it, you can then buy more. So yeah, it's feasibly, it's still feasibly infinite. Cool. Let's kind of fire off rapid fire if we can, because there's a ton. Like you said, almost every video game has. But what are some examples of video game currencies that you can think of?
There's the typical like dollar, right? And different variations of that dollar. So there's rupees, coins, polka dollars,
right?
Gil.
They all kind of,
they're all the same thing.
They all kind of boil down to like, you get this kind of universal currency. You get this in-game universal currency for just doing whatever. You get it from quests, you get it from enemies. It's just the kind of the all-around, all-purpose currency. And you use it at
every store in the game to buy whatever you want. Yeah. But then you have like more unique type of things that's more like experience points, where you're spending, experience points themselves are kind of a currency.
Yep, I was going to make the exact same argument.
And then you're buying abilities and upgrading your character with those. And then God of War has some even more type of currencies where if you collect 5 tiers, you increase your max health.
Right, so there are currencies that are then specific to certain things, like, oh, this currency only drops from these monsters. Or in World of Warcraft, there were currencies that were like, oh, if you do this specific task, you'll get. So if you run this dungeon, at the end of it, when you completed the dungeon, you'll get rewarded with this currency that you can use to buy this gear.
Right.
There's currencies for PvP, so you would, like I've done this many PvP things, I can now buy this PvP related gear,
right,
as opposed to like, again, and WoW is a great example. We'll get more into WoW, but there's a ton of different currencies in WoW because they took that idea and they expanded it, because you have gold, you have badges of justice, you have timeless coins, you have like all of these things. Yeah, it's insane.
And Horizon Zero Dawn has the one item,
the shards,
the shards. Yep.
Yeah, the metal shards.
And use that to buy stuff too, and to upgrade your gear, and to increase your maximum capacity of your storage for your inventory, stuff like that.
So I saw it asserted at one point. I don't know if this is true or not, and I'm leaning to say it's not actually true, but you and I discussed this. But I saw it asserted that rupees were the first. Rupees in Zelda, the original first Zelda game, were the first use of a currency in video games to actually buy like in-game items and progress your character. You and I had been discussing that. We actually think that multi-user dungeons had vastly,
and
more
the text-based
expansive
adventure games too.
Yeah, they had vastly more expansive virtual economies than.
But I
than
would
Zelda
say
did.
there's some truth to that statement, and I think maybe it is in mainstream video game consoles.
Yeah.
It was the first one to do that.
Well, and you definitely, like, in games before Zelda that I can think of, again, when you collect, other than the fact that you get in exchange, you'd get things like lives. Like, really, the quote-unquote currencies, the points and stuff that you collect were really more about your high score. It was more like, oh, if you maximize your ability to collect these coins, you're going to have a higher score on the scoreboard.
Right.
One might argue that you do get something in exchange for that, therefore it applies to a currency.
You get fame, notoriety,
exactly, yeah, exactly. So one could make that argument. So therefore, I will say I still think it counts as a currency. But definitely the idea of like buying in-game things and getting in-game rewards from currencies, Zelda was definitely pioneering that at its time.
The original NES Zelda was like the first time we saw a console-based RPG that had only been seen on PC type gaming platforms. So again, that's why I was thinking there's a little bit of truth to that, but the PC gaming world and all of the, what'd you call them?
MUDs, multi-user dungeons?
Multi-user dungeons.
We talked about them before with
text-based adventure
MMOs.
games. Would totally have already done that and laid that foundation before Zelda came to the scene.
I mean, they had fully functioning virtual economies at that point, so cool. So let's talk about pros and cons. But I want to break it up into two different. So we're going to talk about 4 different pros and cons.
Oh my.
So I want to talk about the pros and cons. Like, so what we end up seeing is that I find it rare that a video game strikes the balance between a currency system that's too simple and a currency system that's too complex.
Okay.
So good examples of that would be Legend of Zelda. The currency system is fairly simple. You collect rupees, you can buy stuff.
Yeah.
In World of Warcraft, like I said, there are multiple currency systems all tied to different activities. So it's very, very complex. So let's start with the pros and cons. I want to talk about the pros and cons of a system that's simple. Let's start with there. Like, what are the pros and cons of simple currency systems?
Pros. It allows you to have a progression in which you really feel like excited. There's a gameplay loop and there's like an excitement. Diablo has this with its loot.
Yep.
Borderlands has it with loot as well. Zelda has this with, it doesn't take that much time to kind of smack enough bushes and smash enough jars to collect the rupees you need to buy the Hylian shield from the store to allow you to go up Death Mountain. And so, like, the simple currency systems allow you to have that, like, addiction. And I'm using that very lightly. I don't mean like addiction, but there's a element of I want to keep going, and I'm getting enough as a reward to keep that dangling carrot.
Yep,
is there and it works, and like it makes you feel good. You're having fun. It has a fun element.
Yeah, it definitely is like triggering that. Like, ooh, I collected something.
Right.
Like my quote unquote work paid off. Like me playing this game, but it's definitely that like reward, triggering that reward center of your brain.
And there's a quick enough return to get that instant gratification going, and you just keep playing. The con to that is usually how these systems work out at the end of the game is you have so much money that you don't have anything to spend it on.
Right, it's trivial at that point.
And like Red Dead Redemption 2 is perfect. At the very end of the game, I won't spoil it, but you get a huge lump of cash, and you have you can buy every clothing item in the game, upgrade every type of gun in the game, buy all of the horses in the game, and you still have money left over.
Yeah, I felt that way. Like
I was like, I have everything. Like I don't need money anymore.
I felt that way 2/3 of the way. I didn't even get to the end, and I was like, I have way more money than I know what to do with. That was why, like, that's why it's actually one of the contributing factors to how I ended up playing the game from a moral perspective, because I was so like nonchalant about the amount of money I had no problem being like, yeah, no, don't worry, you don't have to pay me that. Yeah, you don't have to pay me for that.
And then you came off as honorable.
I'm
you
good.
Didn't want to.
When like normally if I had been strapped for cash, I would have been like, nah, y'all give me that money. You know what I mean? Like, or rather, I should say, maybe I wouldn't have been that way, but I would have been more likely to be that way. So definitely, like, it had an end net result on the way I ended up playing the game, just the basic currency system.
Yeah,
it's crazy. The other con I would say, and this con can probably apply to both complex and simple, but I'll say it anyways. Currency systems are meant to try to emulate, give you the feeling of the real world currency system. That's why we have it. That's why they're in the form of gold and coins and dollars. Is because like it's meant to try to, if not teach you how to like budget, then at least simulate the idea of like budgeting and scarcity and all that stuff. The problem is it's a false, like in the real world, the way currency works is like, I have to spend a certain amount of money just to stay alive, like for expenses. So when I make X amount of money at my job, Y percentage of that I have to spend on just simple basic needs. So I have to keep making more to sustain those needs. And then anything I make above that then it gets budgeted into all the other areas of things I want. Whereas the video games, like, I've yet to see a video game where it's like, I have to feed my character every 5 minutes in order for him to stay alive, so therefore I have to spend some of my money on that. On the one hand, I'm like, wow, that doesn't sound like fun at all.
Yeah, it doesn't sound fun at all.
But it might make for an a more artistic experience. It might make for a more educational experience. I think people could still get something, even if it's not necessarily quote-unquote fun. We're seeing right now, like, I mean, Red Dead Redemption had parts that were not quote-unquote fun.
Right.
But you played them for the...
Exactly. That you enjoyed and ended up, like enjoying.
It's still... Exactly. You can find...
artistic experience.
You can find enjoyment in things that are... Like,
painful.
You can find... Yeah, you can find... Yes, you can. You can find a lot of joy in things that aren't quote-unquote fun. Like, fun isn't the only mode of enjoyment.
Right.
So, I think that experimenting with that would be interesting to see. We can talk more about that when we get to the end of the podcast. Yeah. But I thought it was worth mentioning that, like, yeah, those super simple... systems, I think, have the con of definitely being like, okay, yeah, this is trivial now. Like, it's not teaching you anything about actual currency. It's just like
diminishes the value of currency.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Let's talk about the complex currency. What are the pros and cons of a game like World of Warcraft, where you just have so many different currencies you have to keep track of that I couldn't even list them all if I tried?
Yeah, it's a lot. The pro is it allows you to segregate aspects of your game and highlight that aspect of it.
And chase after one thing. Like, I'm going to get that one thing because I'm going to just do this one activity over and over again.
Like, this specific type of enemy will drop this specific currency. So I'm going to go after these specific enemies that are super difficult and require a lot more time and thought and effort. And so this currency is more valuable. It will get me something better. It's more like instead of the instant gratification gameplay loop, it's the long-term, like, casting your line out there. I'm going to get this later. Yeah. And it's worth it. And there's a payoff for that. You know, the delayed gratification aspect of it. So that's definitely a pro. You can also, in a kind of, I use like a like a Metroid style kind of game where areas of the game are blocked off until you unlock certain abilities to gain access to them. Mm-hmm. You can do that with specific types of complex currencies. When you say like, oh, this area this dude won't let you in unless you have 5 of this type of thing. Well, to get 5 of those things, I got to go kill 5 of these bosses. And so here's that trade-off, and allows me access to the game. So it allows the developers of the game to pace you as a player in a different way. And sometimes
but that can also be accused of time gating, which can be frustrating. Yeah,
right. And World of Warcraft
was accused of that. Yeah,
the cons of those things are that exactly. Mm-hmm. You can add padding, you can add unnecessary complication. It's hard to keep track of these multiple currencies.
Well, and the big thing that frustrated me, again, going back to the World of Warcraft example, because this is sort of my baseline. With WoW, like, it would be one thing if all those currencies were still relevant at endgame level. But the fact that, again, most of, I would say that like a good 60 to 80% of the actual currencies that you can collect in World of Warcraft are for outdated content.
Yeah.
That like you know, if you're just running an old dungeon, like you get this currency that you have no idea what it does, you have no idea what it gets you, and more than likely it just gets you outdated gear that you wouldn't use anyways. Right. In some cases you can save up and buy like a mount with them, but like in most cases it's just the stuff that was used for progression at the time 2 expansions ago and is now completely useless. So you end up with just this needlessly complicated amount of currencies that like, okay, like at what point do the developers say we need to like simplify this, just get rid of these things? They shouldn't even drop anymore because they're not, and like make it so that if there are mount or cosmetic rewards tied to them, you can get them some other way. Because otherwise, it's just stupid to have.
Yeah, and that it's not a con within the currency itself; it's a con for the game designer.
Exactly,
it's a problem. Like make that stuff forward compatible. Trade that old currency into something for the new currency, so you can stay current. Like you were saying,
or just obliterate. Because if you're doing trading currencies and stuff, no one wants to manage that in their fantasy.
It should be automatic.
Role playing game.
Like, oh, you did this 3 expansions ago. You have this much currency. Have a notification that says this has been converted. Done.
Yep. And you can still have a complex currency system. You can still reward different activities with different currencies, but keep them in like a series of like keep them to like maybe at a maximum of like 8 per expansion.
Yeah.
Like, and then all the old currencies, you convert them into something new that's relevant to what the activity was
and
at the time.
This is very similar to the microtransaction controversy that Destiny faced. And it was like this silver from Destiny 1 that you paid real life money for didn't forward progress into Destiny 2. And so when all these players had spent hours and hours and hours and hundreds of dollars in Destiny 1 content, they expected to start off Destiny 2 at least having that old currency be brought forward, the unspent currency. And it wasn't. So Destiny 1 was chopped off, done, over, no more expansions, no more new content, but you still had, X amount of dollars in the bank that you had paid real money for, or sorry, silver, X amount of silver in the bank. And that silver can only be used to purchase content in Destiny 1 that you don't play anymore. So Destiny 2 comes out, whole new game, whole new realm of stuff to do and all this stuff. Why didn't they just make that, like, bring it forward into the new Destiny 2 monetization system? Yeah. So that's a problem on the designers, the developers, the publishers, on people, not really inherent in the currency complexity itself.
Yeah. All right, cool. Do you think there's any game out there that has struck a good balance? Can you think of anything of a game that's like got a nice balance between complex and simple, or that does simple and complex, like a game that's like, oh, this isn't really balanced between the two, but it's like it does simple really well, or it does complex really well?
Games that do simple really well are a lot. I mean, Japanese RPGs, it's simple. You collect money from killing enemies and you go buy your stuff with it. It's not super bad. The only con that it falls into is by the time you get to the end of the game, you just have a ton of money.
It's trivial, yeah.
But that's not, to me, that's okay. That's fine, because you're still getting the instant gratification. You want to play, it's fun.
I think of a game that's got a complex currency system that's not actually that bad is Diablo 3.
Oh, yeah?
Because like you have like 3 levels of crafting materials, which I would consider a currency system. You have to collect an arbitrary imaginary thing to make a thing. They just gussy it up in the form, like in the fantasy of like, I'm crafting this together. But there's like 3 different levels of crafting, 3 or 4 different levels of crafting materials that are all like specific, and you can see it in the color. Like if you salvage a blue thing, you're going to get a blue material. If you're going to salvage a legendary, you're going to get a legendary orange material.
Right. Yeah.
And then the only other materials that are really out there are like there's things that are tied to specific bounties. So you go after the bounty. So again, you know what you're going after, it never, like, they never become obsolete. You're always going after the same currencies. And then the only other thing that they have is gold. Like, gold is then the sort of universal kind of like underlying one. You always need gold for repairs. You always need gold to craft things. So like, you're still using your gold. So at no point are you just like, I've got so much gold I don't need to worry about it.
I mean, do some have a counterpoint to your argument there with Diablo 3. I would say it does not. That it's actually pretty poor. And that's
really?
Every one of those currencies that you've mentioned, I've never had to keep track of. I've never worried if I had enough. I was always able to repair every gear. I get so much junk, and I salvage it constantly that I always have enough materials to craft anything
Maybe I'm
I
thinking about like earlier Diablo 3 when like back when like it first came out and you were like managing all these different things.
Yeah, I don't feel like I manage any of my currencies in Diablo 3 ever.
I
just get what I want.
All right.
The limiting reagent is whether it drops.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's move on and talk about how do video game currency systems different from real life currencies. We actually already kind of hit on this, so we might. I
heard a quote that's it was like a tweet or something that I heard where it was like, if I spent as much time worrying about my real life currency as my video game currency, I would be so much wealthier right now. And I was like,
that's kind of true.
Wow. Like,
there have been moments in my life when I've got like hyper focus on a certain WoW goal. Like, I want to get this mount by the end of the week. And like, I'm like micromanaging my time. Like, how much time can I spend doing this arbitrary task to get this?
Yeah.
Like, to maximize the amount of like Y currency that I get in order to buy the mount. Like, I've been there for sure.
I thought it was pretty funny.
And you guys, you've heard me talk enough about my personality on this podcast. You guys know that I'm not like a type A. Like, my wife does the majority of the budgeting in the family. Yeah. I kind of help her make like large scale financial decisions and stuff like that. But like the dollars and cents, that's my wife's brain. That is not me. So like the fact that I can actually like engage that in a game, it's like a weird, like, I don't know, it's like a weird personality quirk where I'm just like, I switch into like, oh yeah, I'm budgeting my time. Like, I'm becoming like this currency genius.
And yeah, real life currencies and do fluctuate. Inflation happens in a video game world. You have an ecosystem that doesn't change, so currencies don't really fluctuate in value within the game system. That, at least of the old days. Now we have these live, breathing online worlds with microtransactions and those transitions. So you have an actual correlation between the value of an in-game currency to our real life currency, and so things have kind of changed over time. But in a single player, succinct, tied up, thing, the value of the in-game currency never changes. It's based, it's in the game, where a real-life currency does. So,
well, and I think the bottom line that we were kind of hitting on earlier is, at the end of the day, the real-life currencies are based on survival.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, I would say there's survival and luxury, but again, luxury is just a more advanced form of survival. You know what I mean? Like, it's a more comfortable, I should say, form of survival. So really, when you're talking about real life currencies, so there would be, if I were to cheat someone out of 30 gold in World of Warcraft, I wouldn't feel so bad about it. If I were to cheat someone out of $30 in the real world, I would feel a little bit more bad about it, because I affected their livelihood. I affected their ability to actually, like, survive. Maybe not at maybe not on like a macro level, but on a micro level, I definitely impacted their day. Well, crap, there goes my lunch money or whatever.
Yeah, like real life currencies are tied to so much more of our emotions and
so there's more at stake.
Day to day,
and I haven't found a game that really simulates those stakes as high, and maybe that's okay. Maybe video game currencies should stay that way. Maybe video game currencies should stay in the realm of relative triviality. You will see people blow up over people getting cheated out of gold in World of Warcraft all the time, but like.
And you have like MMOs like EVE Online,
but we can all kind of
where
just
those spaceships are worth millions of real life dollars.
Yeah,
and they just have like a massive war. And
we're gonna have. I think that we could spend an entire podcast talking about EVE alone. And the stories that come out of that. I definitely do want to have a podcast. While researching this, we came across a Wikipedia article we'll link off to that basically like details virtual economies, which is like it's like the AP level course on what we're talking about now. We're talking about like on the level of just the currencies themselves, but there are entire virtual economies that do involve real world dollars, and that's where EVE Online comes in.
And it even like is the foundation of, not foundation, but it does blur the lines between video game currencies, video game ecosystems, virtual currencies, and then cryptocurrencies. And like it blurs all of that together. There's a whole like the history of video game currencies and how In Korea, there was some pirating going on, and video games were primarily PC-based, but also stolen over torrent websites and had no value. So they were coming up with ways that they could make money off of these games. And so that's when they introduced microtransactions for the first time, where you could buy in-game items with real-life money. And then, that goes into the blurry worlds of blockchain and using cryptocurrencies to purchase in-game items, which also have real life value, and so you can then tie closer relationships between a gear and a game and $1 in your pocket.
Yeah, I mean, and to use WoW, continue as just it's my most familiar example. There are all time, Fortnite bucks or whatever are great.
V-bucks,
yeah, V-bucks, whatever they're called. Like, if I was more familiar with Fortnite, that might be my go-to answer. But with World of Warcraft, they have the WoW tokens or whatever, and literally a WoW token it's literally worth time. It is worth 30 days of in-game time, or 15 real life dollars, or 30,000 gold, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like there's 3 different values tied to this arbitrary currency, and that's the link between video game currency and cryptocurrency. Mm-hmm. In fact, there's an article we'll link off to that demonstrates how video game currencies were the foundation of what we now call cryptocurrency. So these currencies are now, it's no longer just coins you collect for a high score in Pac-Man. It's like these currencies are actually having effect on real world.
It's fascinating how it's evolved.
Economies. Yeah. So that answers that question. We had that as a whole question. So we like to always kind of look forward to the future. And so we usually wrap up our last 5-10 minutes talking about the future of whatever our topic is. So what would you like to see more or less of regarding video game currencies in the future?
I would like to see them perfect the single-player experience in-game currencies.
Okay.
And so, Red Dead Redemption 2, we talked about this a lot because it's relevant, it's new, it's hot, it's awesome, it's an amazing game. It's across all platforms, but it has that problem where you're super poor at the beginning, so money sounds exciting.
Yeah.
You want to loot every body, you want to do every side quest.
And that's when I was most engaged in the game, for sure. Because I was oh my gosh, I could choose to rob this person right now and get $4. Or I could choose to be the honorable path. I'm going to rob them and get my $4. But then at the end of the game, it was I'm not going to rob these people. Why would I do that?
And to be honorable unlocks different quest lines, different conversations. So there's incentive. There's incentive. There's incentive to be honorable because you get more stuff, but there's also incentive to have more money because you can get more stuff. Now, I want to see games not fall into that trap where at the end of the game you're super rich and it never matters. I want it to have that balance, that arc from beginning to end where money has value, but it causes you to think it has more risk. And I think you would get more player investment and more emotional strings pulled if you were to have some sort of economic system within a game that is, I don't even know what it is because we've never seen it before, but it has that. You know what I mean?
I would say that my answer would definitely depend on what kind of game we're talking about. So if we are talking about single player experiences, which we tend to lean towards on 80-bit Podsmash, then I would agree with you definitely. I would definitely like to see some more experiences that are both fun and kind of educational while still being artistic. I know maybe that's too much to ask. But like I was saying earlier, let's see a video game where the currency is really tied to your survival in the game.
Yeah. So you're going on the hyper-realistic kind of train here.
But it doesn't have to even be hyper-realistic. It could be it could be surrealistic. It could be, fantastic. Let's see a good example that may not necessarily tie to currency is I remember there was an Ultimate Spider-Man video game that came out, I want to say, for the GameCube.
Mm-hmm. That sounds right.
And
Activision probably published that too.
Yeah. You played as Spider-Man, or there were parts where you played as Venom.
Yeah.
And there was a cost. When you were Venom, you were stronger than Spider-Man, faster than Spider-Man. However, your health constantly ticked down unless you ate random bystanders.
Yeah, I did hear about that. Yeah.
So you were encouraged to do this thing that you wouldn't normally do it, and you didn't have to worry about as Spider-Man. So there was literal gameplay. So it can be as out of the box as that. I need to constantly be feeding my mana pool, or else my mana pool is going to kill me, or whatever, or my mana pool is going to cost me. Literally, if I don't feed my mana pool, I lose my spells at the end of an hour.
Yeah.
So it could be something as out of the box as that, but it would be interesting to see more of a legitimate cost. like gameplay cost to, and therefore making currencies that much more compelling.
Yeah.
And again, I think it would be interesting, A, as a like artistic tool, while being also interesting, B, as a educational tool to really teach people about, because video games have that power to really kind of like introduce you to like concepts in a way that's like simulated,
right?
Where there's not actual real world cost. So I mean, I guess another good example would be like Final Fantasy 11, the original Final Fantasy MMO, where you like lost, if you died, you lost experience. Yes. And so I don't necessarily want it to be that far of an extreme. So I think there's a balance. I think there's a way where you can make it fun enough to be compelling while not being so punishing that it's just a pain in the butt. So I think that like games could do more to strike that balance.
Yeah, I would love to see that too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. All right. I want to just kind of have one more bottom line question.
Yep.
Do you think that as a gameplay mechanic, video game currencies work?
Yes, and of course it's a complex answer.
I know.
It's a bottom line question, but of course it can't just be a simple answer.
Yeah.
Yes and no. They work as a gameplay mechanic in ways that we've talked about. Gating, pacing. Do you need currencies to do those things?
Decision making, like, complex decision making.
You can completely replace an in-game currency with your different versions of gating, pacing, and decision making.
Right.
Dialogue choices, abilities that unlock certain areas, like time played equals unlocks. I mean, you can do so much different.
Yeah, I think it really just serves as a relatable. Like, it's relatable. Like, everyone understands. Even if you call it gil, if you call it bottle caps, if you call it shards, like everyone understands, like I have X amount of dollars, I can spend them on 4 health potions, or I can spend them on 3 health potions and a cool sword. Like, and so in that way, it kind of does teach you budgeting, but it's when they become trivial that like.
Yep. I think Fallout falls into the same exponential thing. You're poor at the beginning, you want to do everything, and then you're super rich and you have everything you want.
Right, so really it's just like, okay, it's the only thing it's teaching you is patience. Eventually you're going to get so rich you can walk in there and just, exactly.
Delayed like gratification.
Maybe there's a lesson in that, but I really do want to see a game where it's like...
Invest. Save your money.
Yeah.
So when you retire, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I think that they have worked thus far, but I really do want to see... That would be my answer is, yeah, they work, but I want to see some innovation going forward, as we've talked about. So cool. Hey, wow, we wrapped that currency episode while having an extra long amount of updates, news to talk about, and all that under an hour.
How about that?
We're getting a little bit more tight about this. Fist bump, boom. All right. Well, that's our episode for today. That's all the kind of questions and discussion we want to have. We're going to link off, like I said, to that Wikipedia article about virtual economy, so you can read more about that. That'll prime you for an entire episode we'll eventually have on that.
Right now, you're chomping at the bit about how you can get more 80-bit Podsmash content. Where can you find us online? You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit.
Yep.
80-bit Podsmash, all lowercases, no hyphens or funny business. If you are looking for more ways to subscribe to us than what you've already heard here, you can go to 80bitpodsmash.com, where there are links to Google Play, iTunes, and Spotify, and our RSS feed is there. You can plug into any third-party app if you can't find us. If there's an application or a platform you want us there and we're not, let us know and we'll be there.
Yeah, we're also on YouTube, and you can just stream our episodes from YouTube. There's a graphic of our logo, and the episodes are all on there. So if that's your preferred platform of choice, you're more than welcome to do that. I would hop on there and subscribe to us, because in the future, you might be seeing some actual video content coming out of us. So, just saying, just wanted to prime that pump there. If you start now, then you'll be on the cutting edge of 80-bit Podsmash's video content. You'll be the first ones to know. Yep.
The best thing you can do for us is to go to iTunes and leave a review of some sort. That helps us get bubbled up in the algorithms and exposed to more folks. So, please do that. Also, share us on your social media feeds.
Yeah, and please let us know what your thoughts are on all this video game currency stuff. If you think there's a game out there that we missed that you're like, why didn't you talk about this currency? It's so awesome. We want to hear about it. We want to hear about your
thoughts. Start a subreddit.
Yeah, exactly.
Conversation about it. Yep. We'll jump in there with y'all.
So anyways, it was a pleasure doing podcasts with you this week, and we hope you all have a great rest of your week.
See you next week.